The dinner table fell silent when Sarah slid the manila envelope across to me. "My mother hired someone to follow you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe her, Mike, but the pictures. Before we jump back, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Inside that envelope was evidence of every late night, every hushed phone call, every mysterious errand I'd been running for the past 3 months. But what the private investigator discovered wasn't what my mother-in-law expected, not even close. My name is Michael Wilson, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a perfect marriage. Sarah and I met during our senior year of college. I was the quiet environmental science major who somehow gathered the courage to ask out the vibrant art student who painted by the campus lake every Tuesday. We've been together for 9 years, married for 7. We built our life in Portland, bought a small house with a garden that Sarah transformed into something from a magazine, and I landed my dream job at the Northwest Conservation Alliance. We weren't rich, but we were happy. At least, that's what I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came last January, when I noticed Sarah growing distant. Small things at first. She stopped asking about my day. Our conversations became shorter. She'd go to bed early, claiming headaches. I chalked it up to winter blues or stress from her graphic design freelance work picking up. But then came the hushed phone calls that would end abruptly when I entered the room, the way she'd tilt her phone screen away when I walked by. "Everything okay?" I asked one night as we were getting ready for bed. "Fine," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Just tired." That weekend, her mother, Barbara, came for what was supposed to be a quick Sunday lunch. Barbara had never particularly liked me. In her eyes, her daughter had settled for someone without ambition. Despite my passion for environmental work, she saw my non-profit salary as proof I couldn't properly provide for Sarah. I'd made peace with her disapproval years ago, focusing instead on making Sarah happy. But that Sunday, I felt Barbara watching me with new intensity. Her eyes followed me around the kitchen as I prepared coffee. When Sarah stepped out to take a phone call, Barbara leaned across the counter. "Sarah seems unhappy," she said bluntly. "She's been working hard," I replied, keeping my voice light. "Big project deadline coming up." Barbara's lips thinned. A woman knows when something's wrong in her marriage. Before I could respond, Sarah returned, and Barbara transformed back into polite conversation. But something had shifted. As they hugged goodbye at the door, I overheard Barbara whisper, "Just think about what we discussed." That night, Sarah was quieter than usual. When I reached for her hand across the couch, she squeezed it briefly before pulling away. "Your mum seemed concerned today," I ventured. Sarah sighed. "She's always concerned about something." "About us?" I clarified. "Is there something we should talk about?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought she might say what was bothering her. Instead, she shook her head. "It's nothing. Just Mom being Mom." 2 days later, I received a text from Carlos, my colleague at the Conservation Alliance. Director approved the special project we're on. My heart raced with excitement. I'd been pitching this community garden initiative for months, a program that would transform abandoned lots into food gardens for underserved neighborhoods. The director had agreed to let me lead it, but with a catch. I needed to secure private funding first, and fast. "This is huge," Carlos said when I reached his desk. "But you know what this means, right? We've got 8 weeks to get everything in place before the board meeting." "Whatever it takes," I promised. What it took was late nights researching potential donors, weekend meetings with community leaders, early mornings drafting proposals. I tried to explain to Sarah why this project mattered so much, not just for my career, but for the families who would benefit. She nodded and said she understood, but the distance between us only grew. And then came the secret phone calls of my own, the clandestine meetings, the unexplained absences. I wasn't just working on the community garden project. Our 7th anniversary was approaching, and I wanted to surprise Sarah with something special, something that might bring back the spark we'd lost. Sarah had always dreamed of having her artwork displayed in a real gallery. She was talented, incredibly so, but her freelance work designing websites and logos had slowly replaced her painting. The last time she'd touched her oils was nearly a year ago. So I reached out to Gina Martinez, the owner of a small but respected gallery in the Pearl District. I'd met her at a Conservation Alliance fundraiser, and she'd mentioned an upcoming showcase for local artists. It's competitive, Gina warned when I showed her photos of Sarah's work on my phone. But these have potential. Can she put together a portfolio? Maybe 3 new pieces? That was the challenge. How to get Sarah painting again without revealing the surprise. I enlisted Emily, Sarah's best friend from art school, who suggested a fake commission, a client who wanted custom paintings for an office space. I can be the middleman, Emily offered. Say they contacted me, but I'm too busy. The plan worked. Sarah was skeptical at first. Who commissions 3 paintings? Sight unseen? But the generous deposit Emily transferred to her account, actually my money, saved carefully over months, convinced her. I watched with joy as my wife set up her easel in the spare room again, the scent of linseed oil and turpentine filling our home on weekends. Meanwhile, I was meeting with potential donors for the garden project, often in coffee shops or restaurants after hours when they were free from their corporate jobs. Carlos and I were making progress, but it meant more late nights, more hushed phone calls, arranging meetings, more secrets I couldn't share with Sarah yet. I should have noticed the toll it was taking on our marriage, should have seen the suspicion growing in Sarah's eyes when I'd come home late smelling of someone else's perfume after meeting with a cosmetics company executive. Should have realized how it looked when I quickly ended calls when she entered the room. Should have understood why she grew quiet when I couldn't explain where I'd been all Saturday afternoon at the gallery with Emily, hanging Sarah's finished and paintings for the showcase I planned to surprise her with on our anniversary, but I was too focused on making everything perfect. The night before our anniversary, I stayed late at the office, finalizing the donor agreement that would fully fund our community garden project. The last donor had committed, and Carlos insisted on celebrating with a quick drink. 1 drink turned into 2 as we excitedly discussed plans, and I lost track of time. When I finally checked my phone, I had 6 missed calls from Sarah and a text that simply read, "Don't bother coming home tonight." I rushed home to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red. When she looked up at me, there was no anger, only resignation. "I know you're having an affair," she said flatly. I was stunned. "What? Sarah, no, please don't lie to me anymore," she interrupted. "My mother's been saying it for weeks, the late nights, the secret calls, the happiness I've seen on your face, even as you're pulling away from me." "I'm not having an affair," I insisted. "I've been working on a special project at work, and yes, something else too, but it's a surprise for our anniversary tomorrow. That's all." She laughed sadly. "That's what Mom said you'd say. Some work excuse, some surprise." "Your mother? What does she have to do with this?" Sarah took a deep breath. "She hired someone, a private investigator." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "She what?" "She was concerned, said she recognized the signs from when Dad." She trailed off. Barbara's husband had left her for a younger woman when Sarah was in high school. It had shaped how Barbara viewed all men, especially me. "I told her she was wrong about you," Sarah continued, "that you'd never do that to me. But then she started pointing things out. The late nights, how you guard your phone, the way you've been distracted. And I started seeing it too." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Sarah, please. He's been following you for 3 weeks, she cut me off. The investigator. He's taking pictures tomorrow to Barbara. She's bringing them over tomorrow. I felt sick. 3 weeks. That covered meetings with donors, sessions at the gallery, everything. How could I explain without ruining both surprises? Sarah, I swear to you, I'm not having an affair. I love you. Only you. She looked at me for a long moment. I want to believe you, Mike, but I'm not sure I can anymore. I slept on the couch that night, my mind racing through options. I could reveal the community garden project. Carlos would understand, but the gallery showing was the next evening, our actual anniversary, if I could just get through one more day. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Morning came, and Sarah and I moved around each other like polite strangers. She mentioned she was meeting her mother for lunch, and my stomach knotted knowing what Barbara would be sharing with her. I headed to work, distracted and miserable. You look terrible, Carlos commented when I arrived. Sarah thinks I'm having an affair, I blurted out. Her mother hired a PI who's been following me. Carlos's eyes widened. Shit, the donor meetings and the gallery, everything. I sank into my chair. I was trying to surprise her. You need to tell her everything, now. But the opening is tonight. Her paintings. Carlos gave me a look that stopped my protests. Mike, your marriage is more important than a surprise. He was right, of course. I tried calling Sarah, but it went straight to voicemail. She was probably already with Barbara, looking at those photos, drawing. All the wrong conclusions. I left a message anyway. Please call me before you do anything. I can explain everything. And then buried myself in work, watching the clock tick toward disaster. At 1:30 p.m., my office phone rang. Unknown number. Michael Wilson? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Yes? My name is Jack Mercer. I believe your mother-in-law hired me to observe your activities. My grip tightened on the phone. The private investigator. Yes, he confirmed. I don't normally do this, but I think you should know that I've advised Mrs. Reynolds not to show the photos to your wife. I was confused. Why would you do that? There was a pause. Because sometimes people see what they want to see, Mr. Wilson. Mrs. Reynolds was convinced you were having an affair, and she hired me to prove it. But that's not what I found. What exactly did you find? I asked, heart pounding. A man working late with his colleague on grant proposals. A man meeting with various business professionals. A man spending time at an art gallery, organizing what appears to be a showing, and a man who, when meeting with an attractive female donor, showed her pictures of his wife on his phone. I remembered that moment. The cosmetics executive had noticed Sarah's framed photo on my desk and asked about her. I'd proudly shown her more photos on my phone. Mrs. Reynolds was disappointed with my findings, Jack continued. She insisted I must have missed something. When I refused to fabricate evidence, she threatened to withhold final payment. I let out a slow breath. Thank you for telling me this. I don't make a habit of interfering in family matters, Mr. Wilson, but I've seen too many relationships destroyed by suspicion. For what it's worth, I told Mrs. Reynolds that in my professional opinion, you're a man planning a surprise for his wife, not conducting an affair. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Would Barbara still show Sarah the photos? Would she lie about what they contained? I needed to reach Sarah immediately. I called again and again, straight to voicemail. In desperation, I called Emily. She's with me, Emily said when she answered. And Mike? She knows everything. My heart sank. Her mother showed her the photos. No, Emily replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. The investigator called her directly after he spoke with you. He told her about the gallery, about the garden project. Then she called me, and I had to come clean about the commission. Is she angry? Why don't you ask her yourself? There was shuffling, and then Sarah's voice came on the line. Mike. Her voice was thick with emotion. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never meant... No, she interrupted. I'm the one. Oh, sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have talked to you instead of listening to my mother. I should have been honest about the late nights, I admitted. I just wanted to surprise you. Emily showed me the gallery, my paintings. She was crying now. I can't believe you did that for me. I know how much your art means to you. I wanted to give that back somehow. There was a moment of silence before she spoke again. Can you come to the gallery? Now? I need to see you. I didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. The gallery was quiet. When I arrived, only a few hours before the scheduled opening, Sarah was standing in front of her paintings, 3 landscapes of places special to us: the lake where we met, the garden where I proposed, the view from our first home together. When she turned and saw me, her face crumpled. I crossed the room in what felt like a single step, and then she was in my arms, apologies and explanations tumbling from both of us until they dissolved into simple, repeated I love yous. Later, as we sat on a bench in the gallery, hands intertwined, Sarah told me everything. How Barbara had planted seeds of doubt for weeks, how the distance between us had made those doubts seem reasonable, how she'd finally agreed to let her mother hire the investigator, hating herself for the betrayal, but desperate to know the truth. And then Jack called me, she said. He told me he'd spoken to you, and then he told me what he'd really found. A husband working on a community project he was passionate about. A husband arranging a surprise gallery showing for his wife's art. He said, her voice caught, he said in 15 years as an investigator, he'd never seen someone go to such lengths to create something meaningful for their spouse. But we were interrupted by Emily, who poked her head around the corner. Sorry to interrupt the reconciliation, but people are arriving early. What should I tell them? Sarah looked at me, then back at Emily. Tell them the artists are ready. The opening was a success beyond anything I could have imagined. Sarah's paintings received praise from critics and collectors alike. 2 sold that night, a validation of her talent that brought happy tears to her eyes. Carlos and the team from the Conservation Alliance came to support us, raising glasses to both Sarah's artistic success and our fully funded community garden project. Barbara did not attend. I called her, Sarah admitted as we drove home that night. Told her I knew what she'd tried to do, that Jack had told me everything. How did she take it? Sarah sighed. Not well. She insisted she was just looking out for me, that men can't be trusted. She reached over and took my hand. I told her I wouldn't be seeing her for a while, that she needed to respect my marriage if she wanted to be part of my life. I squeezed her hand. I'm sorry it came to that. I'm not, she said firmly. I chose you, Mike. I should have remembered that before doubting you. In the months that followed, our marriage grew stronger than ever. The community gardens broke ground in 3 neighborhoods, with Sarah volunteering to design the signage and branding. She continued painting, with another gallery showing already in the works. Barbara eventually apologized, to Sarah at least, though I suspected she still harbored doubts about me. As for Jack Mercer, the private investigator, I sent him a thank you card with tickets to the symphony after Sarah mentioned he'd told her he was a classical music fan. He sent back a brief note. In my line of work, I rarely get to see happy endings. Thank you for the reminder that sometimes suspicion is just love worried it's not being matched. 6 months after what we now jokingly call the investigation, Sarah and I were having dinner when she slid an envelope across the table to me, not unlike the way she'd confronted me that terrible night. What's this? I asked. Open it, she urged, eyes bright with excitement. Inside was a grainy black and white image that took me a moment to decipher. When I realized what I was looking at, my eyes shot up to meet hers. "Is this—" She nodded, beaming. 12 weeks along. Turns out I wasn't feeling distant because I doubted you. My hormones were already changing. I came around the table and pulled her into my arms, laughing and crying all at once. Later that night, as Sarah slept beside me, I found myself thinking about how close we'd come to losing everything, how suspicion and miscommunication had nearly destroyed what mattered most. And I thought about that note from Jack Mercer. Sometimes suspicion is just love, worried it's not being matched. He was right in a way. Sarah's mother, misguided as she was, acted out of love for her daughter. Sarah's doubts grew from fear of losing what we had built together, but he'd missed something important. Trust isn't just the absence of suspicion. It's the active choice to believe in someone, even when appearances suggest otherwise. It's having faith that the person you love is still worthy of that love, even when you don't understand their actions. That's the truth the private investigator discovered, though it wasn't in any of his photos or reports. Love isn't just about grand gestures or anniversary surprises. It's about choosing each other, day after day, even when doubt tries to pull you apart. Sarah and I had been tested, and despite everything, despite secrecy and suspicion, despite interference and misunderstanding, we'd found our way back to that simple truth. And now, with a new life growing between us, we had the chance to build something even stronger than what we'd almost lost. As February turned to March, the distance between Sarah and me grew into something I couldn't ignore. Our conversations had become routine exchanges of information rather than meaningful talks. Did you pay the electric bill? Can you pick up milk on your way home? The warmth that had defined our relationship for nearly a decade was fading, replaced by something mechanical and cold. One Wednesday evening, I came home to find Barbara's silver Lexus parked in our driveway again, the third time that week. The moment I stepped through the door, their hushed conversation in the kitchen ceased. Sarah's eyes were rimmed with red, and Barbara wore that expression I'd come to dread, a mixture of vindication and concern that made my stomach knot. "Mike," Sarah said, her voice unnaturally even. "Mom was just leaving." Barbara gathered her designer handbag, giving her daughter's shoulder a squeeze before facing me. "Michael," she acknowledged with a curt nod. I stepped aside to let her pass, catching a whiff of her expensive perfume, the same one she'd worn since Sarah and I started dating, a scent I'd once associated with uncomfortable holiday dinners and now linked to something more insidious. "Your mother seems to be spending a lot of time here lately," I remarked after the front door closed, trying to keep my tone neutral. Sarah busied herself wiping down the already clean counter. "She's concerned about me." "What exactly is she?" "Concerned about us." The single word hung in the air between us. "She thinks we're having problems." I moved closer, leaning against the kitchen island. "Are we? Having problems?" Sarah's hand stilled on the countertop. For a moment, I thought she might actually open up, tell me what was really going on. Instead, she shrugged. "Every marriage has rough patches." "This isn't like you, Sarah. Something's changed." She finally looked at me, her green eyes searching. "Mine. You've been different too, Mike. You can't deny that." She wasn't wrong. The community garden project was consuming more of my time and mental energy than I'd anticipated. The initiative had started as a simple proposal to convert vacant lots into urban gardens, but as more stakeholders expressed interest, it had evolved into something much larger. A comprehensive food security program that could transform access to fresh produce in Portland's underserved neighborhoods. "Work has been intense," I admitted. "This project could be a game changer for the Conservation Alliance, for the community." "It's more than that." Sarah turned away again. You're secretive. Your phone is always face down. You take calls in another room. My chest tightened. Some of those calls had been with potential donors who needed reassurance about the project's viability. Others had been with Emily about Sarah's surprise gallery showing. I couldn't explain either without ruining everything. "It's complicated," I said lamely. "That's exactly what someone hiding something would say." The edge in her voice took me by surprise. "Sarah, that's not fair. I've never given you any reason not to trust me." She laughed without humor. "That's what I keep telling myself. That's what I keep telling my mother." She pushed away from the counter. "I have a deadline. I'll be in my office." I watched her retreat down the hallway, the door to her home office closing with deliberate softness. No slam, no dramatic exit, just a quiet withdrawal that somehow hurt more than any argument. That night, I lay awake long after Sarah had fallen, asleep, replaying her words in my mind. Had Barbara been systematically poisoning our marriage with her suspicions? Or had I been so focused on my project and Sarah's surprise that I'd failed to see the damage my secrecy was causing? The next morning, I made a decision. I'd tell Sarah about the community garden project, not the gallery show. That could still be a surprise, but at least I could be transparent about what was keeping me late at the office. I prepared her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, a luxury we usually saved for weekends. When she emerged from our bedroom, her expression softened at the sight of the kitchen table, set with fresh flowers I'd picked from her garden. "What's the occasion?" she asked, accepting the mug of coffee I offered. "No occasion. Just wanted to talk," I said, pulling out her chair. "There's something I need to tell you about work." She sat down slowly, her body language cautious. I joined her, taking a deep breath before launching into an explanation of the community garden initiative. I told her about the vacant lots we'd identified, the partnerships we were developing with local food banks, how Carlos and I had been working overtime to secure funding before the board meeting. "This could be huge for my career," I concluded. "If we pull this off, the director has hinted at a promotion." Sarah listened without interrupting, her pancakes growing cold as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" she finally asked. It was a fair question. "At first, it was just a proposal. I didn't want to get your hopes up in case it didn't go anywhere. Then once it started gaining momentum, I got caught up in the details." "That explains the late nights," she said carefully, "but not the secrecy, not the hushed phone calls." I hesitated. How much could I reveal without compromising the gallery surprise? "Some of the donors are sensitive about publicity. They don't want their involvement known until everything's official." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either. Sarah's eyes told me she knew I was still holding something back. "I want to believe you, Mike, I really do." "But," I prompted when she didn't continue. She sighed. "But my mother—" "Your mother has never liked me," I interrupted, frustration bleeding into my voice. "She's always thought you married beneath your potential." "That's not true," Sarah protested, but her defense lacked conviction. "She blamed me when you stopped painting, said I didn't support your art enough. She worries about me. She interferes," I countered, "and right now she's seeing problems that don't exist." Sarah's expression hardened. "The problems exist, Mike. Maybe not the ones she thinks, but something isn't right between us, hasn't been for months." She was right, and that truth stung worse than her suspicion. We'd been drifting apart even before the garden project and anniversary planning had consumed my attention. Small disappointments and minor frustrations had accumulated like sediment, gradually changing the flow of our relationship until we found ourselves moving in different currents. "I'm sorry," I said softly, "for not being more present, for not noticing sooner that you were unhappy." Her eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry too. I should have talked to you instead of to my mother." It felt like a breakthrough, a small crack in the wall that had been building between us. I reached across the table for her hand, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't. "Pull away. No more secrets," she said. "Promise me." I hesitated for a fraction of a second, thinking of the gallery showing, now just 3 weeks away. "No more secrets," I agreed, making a mental exception for her surprise. Later that day, I called Emily from my office to update her on the situation. "So she suspects something but doesn't know about the gallery?" Emily clarified after I explained. "Right. I told her about the garden project, but I still want the show to be a surprise." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Mike, as your friend and as Sarah's friend, I have to ask, is this surprise worth the strain it's putting on your marriage?" "It's just for a few more weeks," I insisted. "Once she sees her work on display, once she realizes I've been trying to give her back something she lost, it'll all make sense." "Maybe." Emily didn't sound convinced. "But what if Barbara convinces her of something worse before then?" I hadn't told Emily about my suspicions that Barbara was actively trying to undermine our marriage. It seemed too paranoid, too dramatic, but the question hit uncomfortably close to my own fears. "Sarah and I had a good talk this morning," said instead. "I think we're on better footing now." "I hope you're right," Emily replied. "For what it's worth, the paintings are incredible. The third one she finished yesterday, the view from your first apartment, it's her best work in years." That knowledge warmed me through the rest of the day. Sarah was painting again, reconnecting with her passion. Whatever rough patch we were experiencing, whatever doubts Barbara was sowing, that gift was real. My optimism lasted exactly 27 hours. The following evening, I was meeting with a potential donor at Riverside Cafe, an upscale restaurant. Downtown, Gwendolyn Parker was the CEO of Oregon Green Investments, a firm that specialized in environmentally sustainable projects. She was exactly the kind of high-profile supporter we needed, and the meeting had taken weeks to arrange. "The urban food desert issue speaks to me," Gwendolyn said, leaning forward across the table. Her perfume, something floral and expensive, wafted between us as she studied the proposal I'd prepared. "But I need to be convinced your organization can execute at this scale." I was in the middle of explaining our implementation timeline when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Sarah. I silenced it, making a mental note to call her back as soon as the meeting concluded. "As you can see on page 4, I continued, "we've already secured agreements with 3 property owners and have partnership commitments from—" My phone buzzed again and again. 3 calls in quick succession, all from Sarah. "I'm sorry," I said to Gwendolyn. "This is unusual. Would you excuse me for just a moment?" She nodded, though her expression made clear that my professional stock had just dropped. I stepped away from the table and returned Sarah's call. "Where are you?" Her voice was tight, controlled in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. "At a meeting with a potential donor. Is everything okay?" "At Riverside Cafe?" she asked. Ignoring my question, a chill ran through me. "Yes, how did you—" "Table by the window, blonde woman, blue dress, about 40. I turned, scanning the restaurant until I spotted a figure standing near the entrance. Sarah. She was wearing her work clothes, black pants and a simple blouse, her face pale as she watched me through the glass. "I'll be right there," I said. Ending the call, I returned to the table long enough to make my apologies to Gwendolyn, promising to follow up the next day. Her disappointment was evident, but my focus was entirely on the situation unfolding at the entrance. "Sarah," I began as I approached, but she was already turning away, pushing through the doors to the street. I followed her outside, catching her arm. "Sarah, wait. What's going on?" She pulled free from my grasp. My mother called, said I should see for myself where you really were tonight. I told you I had a meeting with a beautiful blonde woman, very cozy, very intimate. That's Gwendolyn Parker. She's the CEO of a green investment firm. I've been trying to get her support for the garden project for weeks. Carlos was supposed to be here too, but he's home with the flu. Sarah's expression was a mixture of anger and what looked horribly like disappointment, as if she'd been hoping to be wrong. Convenient. It's the truth. Call Carlos if you don't believe me. I shouldn't have to verify my husband's whereabouts, Mike. She was right, and the realization that we'd reached this point, Sarah checking up on me, Barbara actively encouraging her suspicions, hit me like a physical blow. How did your mother even know I was here? I asked. Sarah looked away. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Is she having me followed? The flash of guilt across Sarah's face was answer enough. My stomach dropped. She suggested someone. Sarah admitted quietly, a private investigator she knows, just to confirm your schedule. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're having me investigated. Based on what? Some phone calls about work and a donor meeting that I told you about this morning. You didn't tell me you were meeting a woman. I didn't know I needed to specify the gender of every person I meet professionally. The hurt was transforming into anger now. I've never given you any reason not to trust me. Not in 9 years. People change, she said flatly. Yes, they do. The Sarah I married would never have let her mother convince her to spy on her husband. It was a low blow, and I regretted it immediately. Sarah flinched as if I'd slapped her, then straightened. Her shoulders. I'm going to my mother's, she said. I need to think. Sarah, wait. But she was already walking away, her steps quick and determined. I watched her go, rooted to the spot, as passing pedestrians cast curious glances at the obvious drama unfolding on the sidewalk. I didn't follow her, pride maybe or shock at how quickly things had deteriorated. Instead, I returned to the now empty table, paid the bill, and drove home alone to our quiet house. 3 days. That's how long Sarah stayed at her mother's comfortable lakeside condo in Lake Oswego. 3 days during which I alternated between anger at being distrusted and fear that our marriage was crumbling beyond repair. I called and texted, but her responses were brief and non-committal. I need space. We'll talk when I'm ready. On the 4th day, I came home from work to find her car in the driveway. My heart pounded as I entered the house, not knowing what version of my wife I would find. The woman who had once looked at me with complete trust, or the stranger who had been watching me from the restaurant entrance, her eyes full of suspicion. I found her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. With mechanical precision, she glanced up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. Hi, I said, hovering in the doorway. I'm making stir-fry, she replied, as if the past few days hadn't happened. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. I set my bag down slowly. Sarah, we need to talk about what happened. The knife paused momentarily before resuming its rhythm against the cutting board. Yes, we do. I waited, but she didn't elaborate, just continued preparing dinner with focused attention. I'm sorry I didn't tell you more about the meeting, I finally said. But having me followed, Sarah, that's not us. That's not who we are. She set the knife down carefully and turned to face me. I told her to stop. The investigator? She nodded. I was upset that night, confused. But you were right. This isn't us. Or at least it shouldn't be. She took a deep breath. I've been staying with Mom, but I've also been thinking about why I was so quick to believe something might be wrong. I moved further into the kitchen, still keeping some distance between us. And we've been growing apart, Mike. Even before your project, even before all the late nights, we stopped sharing things, important things. She gestured vaguely around the kitchen. We live together, we eat together, we sleep in the same bed, but it's like we're just coexisting. Her words crystallized what I'd been feeling but hadn't been able to articulate. When did that happen to us? I don't know. Gradually. She looked away. I stopped painting. You've been frustrated at work. We both retreated into our separate worlds. And your mother. My mother doesn't help, Sarah acknowledged. She sees the worst in situations, in people, especially men. She sighed. But she didn't create the distance between us, Mike. She just exploited it. The honesty was painful but necessary. We'd been avoiding this conversation for months, maybe years. What do we do now? I asked. Sarah picked up the knife again, turning it over in her hands. I don't know exactly, but I want to try, to fix us. She looked up at me. Do you? More than anything. The relief that washed over her face told me she'd been genuinely uncertain of my answer. How had we drifted so far that she could doubt my commitment to our marriage? That night was a tentative truce. We ate dinner, talked carefully about neutral topics, and went to bed with a chaste kiss that felt like a first step back toward each other. The following morning, Sarah mentioned she'd taken on a rush design project, a corporate rebranding due in 3 weeks. It'll mean late nights, she said over breakfast, watching me carefully. Probably working through the weekends. It was a test, I realized. A small one, but important. Whatever you need to do, I said. Just keep me posted if you'll be later than expected. She nodded, relief visible in the relaxing of her shoulders. What Sarah couldn't know was that the timing of her project perfectly aligned with my needs. With her working late, I could coordinate the final details of the gallery, showing without raising suspicion. It felt like the universe throwing us a small kindness after weeks of complications. That afternoon, Carlos stopped by my office, closing the door behind him. "How are things at home?" he asked without preamble. I gave him a summary of the confrontation at the restaurant and the tentative reconciliation. "We're talking again at least. And the PI, is that still happening?" "Sarah says she called it off." I ran a hand through my hair. "But honestly, I'm not sure I believe her mother would give up that easily." Carlos leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Because if someone is still watching you, heading to the gallery multiple times a week isn't exactly helping your case." He was right, of course. The final preparations for the showing required frequent visits. Hanging the paintings, arranging lighting, coordinating with the caterer. All activities that, to a suspicious observer, could easily be misinterpreted. "Sarah's working late on a design project," I said. "The timing actually works out." "Until it doesn't," Carlos warned. "Look, I'm rooting for this surprise to work, but not at the cost of your marriage." 2 more weeks, I insisted. "Everything will make sense to her then." Carlos didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. The Community Foundation confirmed their donation this morning. We've hit our funding target. That, at least, was unequivocally good news. The board meeting's next Friday. If everything goes according to plan, we announce the full program the following Monday. "Perfect timing with your anniversary," Carlos noted. "Double celebration." I nodded, trying to take comfort in how the pieces were falling into place professionally, even as my personal life felt like it was hanging by a thread. That evening, I called Emily from my car, parked a block away from our house. "How are the paintings looking?" I asked. "Beautiful. The galleries hung them in that front alcove with the perfect lighting. Gina thinks they'll sell quickly." "They're not for sale," I reminded her. I know, but it's a compliment. They're good enough that serious collectors would want them." She paused. "How's Sarah?" "Better, I think. We're talking again. She says she called off the Investigator." "That's something," Emily said, though she sounded unconvinced. "Mike, I ran into Barbara today at Whole Foods." My grip tightened on the phone. "And?" She was with a man, mid-40s, nondescript. They were deep in conversation and she didn't look happy. Did you hear what they were saying? No, but when she saw me, she ended the conversation abruptly. It seemed, I don't know, off. A chill ran through me. You think it was the investigator? I have no idea. But given everything that's happened, she didn't need to finish the thought. If Barbara was still meeting with the PI, then Sarah had either lied about calling him off, or more likely, Barbara had continued the surveillance without her daughter's knowledge. Thanks for telling me, I said. I should go. Mike. Emily's voice stopped me before I could end the call. Be careful, okay? Barbara plays to win. I sat in my car for a long time after hanging up, watching darkness settle over our neighborhood. What exactly was I up against? A mother-in-law determined to break up our marriage? A professional investigator documenting my every move? Or simply the natural consequences of secrets kept too long, even with good intentions? By the time I walked through our front door, I'd resolved to accelerate the timeline. Waiting for our exact anniversary suddenly seemed less important than clearing the air between Sarah and me. This weekend, I decided. I'd take her to the gallery this weekend and end all the secrecy. Sarah was in her home office when I arrived, doctor ajar, the blue glow of her computer screen illuminating her concentrated expression. She looked up when I knocked lightly on the doorframe. Hey, she said, removing her design glasses. I lost track of time. Have you eaten? Not yet. I thought maybe we could go out, take a break from everything. She hesitated, glancing at her screen. I really should keep working on this. The client wants revised comps by tomorrow. Fair enough. Can I bring you something? Maybe from that Thai place you like? The small gesture seemed to touch her. That would be wonderful. My usual green curry, extra spicy, brown rice. I smiled. Some things I never forget. She returned the smile, small but genuine. Thank you. When I returned with dinner 40 minutes later, Sarah had cleared space on her desk for us to eat together. It was a small thing, but significant, an effort to share space again, to connect despite the pressures of work and the lingering tension between us. As we ate, she told me about her design project, a rebranding for a local cooperative grocery that wanted to expand to multiple locations. She was animated in a way I hadn't seen in months, gesturing with her fork as she described color palettes and typography choices. It's challenging their whole identity, she explained. They've been this neighborhood corner store for 20 years, and now they want to grow without losing their community roots. Sounds familiar, I remarked. The Conservation Alliance is facing similar growing pains. How do we scale our impact without losing our connection to the neighborhoods we serve? Exactly. Her eyes lit up with recognition of the parallel. It's all about authentic expansion. For a few precious minutes, we were us again, partners sharing ideas, building on each other's thoughts. The wall between us hadn't disappeared, but a door had opened, allowing glimpses of the connection we'd once taken for granted. I've missed this, I said quietly. Sarah's expression softened. Me too. We finished dinner in companionable conversation, carefully avoiding the heavier topics that still loomed. As I gathered the empty containers, Sarah caught my wrist. Mike, would you stay? Keep me company while I work. You could read or use your laptop. She paused. I think I've had enough solitude lately. I squeezed her hand. I'd like that. I settled on the small love seat in her office, with my laptop catching up on emails while Sarah returned to her design work. The quiet companionship felt healing, a reminder that our foundation remained solid beneath the recent fractures. Around midnight, Sarah's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then silenced it, without answering. Your mother? I guessed. She nodded, turning back to her computer. She can wait until tomorrow. The small act of prioritizing our reconnection over Barbara's call felt significant. I wanted to ask if she'd told her mother about our reconciliation, if Barbara knew that Sarah had supposedly called off the investigator. But I held back, unwilling to disrupt the fragile peace we'd established. Later, as we got ready for bed, Sarah's phone chimed with a text. She read it, her expression clouding momentarily before she set the phone face down on her nightstand. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Fine," she said, but her tone had shifted, a new tension evident in her shoulders as she slipped under the covers. I lay awake long after Sarah had fallen asleep, my mind racing with possibilities. What had that text said? Was Barbara still feeding her suspicions? Was the investigator still watching me, documenting my visits to the gallery, creating a narrative that would seem damning without context? A deep sense of foreboding settled over me as I stared at the ceiling. The path forward was narrowing rapidly. Either I revealed everything, the community garden project and the gallery showing, or I risked losing Sarah's trust forever. The decision crystallized in my mind. Tomorrow. I would take her to the gallery tomorrow and end all the secrecy. The surprise could still work. It would just be a few days early. Better that than another week of suspicion and surveillance. With that resolution, I finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that events had already been set in motion that would make my decision moot. I woke to the sound of Sarah's alarm, the pale morning light filtering through our bedroom curtains. She was already up, her side of the bed empty. The muffled sounds of cabinet doors closing in the kitchen told me she was making coffee. I lay there for a moment, gathering my thoughts, rehearsing what I would say to her. Today was the day I would end the deception, take her to the gallery, and show her what I'd been working on for months. But when I entered the kitchen, Sarah was dressed for work, car keys already in hand, a travel mug of coffee on the counter beside her purse. "You're leaving early," I observed, trying to mask my disappointment. "Client meeting across town. Traffic will be brutal." She didn't quite meet my eyes as she gathered her things. "I was hoping we could talk this morning. Maybe make some plans for tonight?" She hesitated. "I'll probably work late. This project is at a critical stage." "Sarah," I moved closer, gently took her hand. "I need to show you something important, something I've been working on." For a moment, interest flickered in her expression. "What is it?" "Not here. I want to take you somewhere after work. It'll explain a lot of things." She studied my face, and I could see her weighing my request against whatever doubts still lingered in her mind. "Please," I added, "it's important to me. To us." "Okay," she finally said. "Text me when you're done with work. I'll try to wrap up early." Relief washed over me. "Thank you." She nodded, then surprised me by rising on tiptoe to kiss my cheek before heading for the door. It was a small gesture, but it kindled hope that we were finding our way back to each other. Once she'd left, I called Emily to set things in motion. "You're telling her today?" Emily asked, her tone a mixture of relief and anxiety. "What about the anniversary timing?" "It's not worth the risk anymore. I need to clear the air before things get worse." "I'll call Gina, make sure everything's ready. What time are you thinking?" "Around 6. That gives us both time to finish work." "I'll be there early, just in case. And Mike, good luck." I spent the morning feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The decision to come clean had lifted a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged. Even Carlos noticed the change when I arrived at the office. "You seem chipper," he commented, eyebrow raised. "Good news at home?" "Getting there. I'm telling Sarah everything tonight." He clapped me on the shoulder. "About time. Let me know how it goes." The day passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. The community garden project had reached its funding goal, and the board presentation was all but finalized. By 4:30, I was wrapping up my last email, eager to meet Sarah and finally put an end to all the secrecy. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Wilson, we need to talk. It's about your wife, Jack Mercer." I stared at the screen, my earlier optimism evaporating. Jack Mercer, the private investigator Barbara had hired. Why was he contacting me directly? I stepped outside the office to call the number. Mr. Mercer, this is Michael Wilson. Thank you for calling back. His voice was deep, professional. I believe we should meet. There's a situation developing that you should be aware of. What kind of situation? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Westside Park in 30 minutes? By the fountain. My instinct was to refuse, to demand he explain himself immediately, but curiosity overrode caution. I'll be there. Westside Park was busy with after-work joggers and dog walkers when I arrived. I spotted him immediately, a solidly built man in his mid-40s, wearing a grey blazer over jeans, sitting on a bench with a clear view of the surrounding area. His appearance matched Emily's description of the man she'd seen with Barbara. Mr. Wilson. He didn't stand or offer his hand as I approached. Thank you for coming. What's this about? I remained standing, unwilling to settle into what felt uncomfortably like an interrogation. Mercer gestured to the space beside him. Please, this is a delicate matter. Reluctantly, I sat, maintaining distance between us. I've been hired by Barbara Reynolds to investigate you, he began without preamble. I'm aware. What you may not be aware of is that Mrs. Reynolds has specific expectations about my findings. I frowned. Meaning what exactly? Mercer sighed, removing a small notebook from his jacket pocket. In my profession, clients often have preconceived notions about what I'll discover. Sometimes they're right. Quite often, they're wrong. He flipped through several pages. I've been following you for nearly 3 weeks, Mr. Wilson. Your activities include working late at the Conservation Alliance, meeting with various business contacts at restaurants and coffee shops, and making frequent visits to the Martinez Gallery in the Pearl District. My jaw tightened. You've been thorough. It's my job. He closed the notebook. What's not my job is fabricating evidence of misconduct when none exists. Excuse me? Mrs. Reynolds is dissatisfied with my reports. She believes you're having an affair, specifically with a woman named Emily Chen, with whom you've met several times at the gallery. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Emily is my wife's best friend from college. She's helping me with a surprise for our anniversary. Mercer nodded. I've pieced that together. The gallery showing of your wife's paintings, correct? How did you? As I said, it's my job to observe and analyze. He leaned back on the bench. The problem, Mr. Wilson, is that Mrs. Reynolds doesn't accept my conclusions. She's pressuring me to provide evidence that fits her narrative, not the facts. And you're telling me this because professional integrity, for one. His expression darkened slightly, and because she's now hired someone else, someone with fewer ethical constraints. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that Dominic Vega has been following you since yesterday afternoon, and unlike me, he's known for delivering exactly what his clients want to see, regardless of reality. The name meant nothing to me, but Mercer's tone made clear this was serious. He's fabricating evidence? Let's just say he's creative with his documentation, digital manipulation, selective editing of recordings, contextual misrepresentation. Mercer met my gaze directly. Mrs. Reynolds has requested photographs of you in compromising situations with Miss Chen. I refused. Vega won't. This is insane, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. Why would Barbara go to these lengths? That's outside my purview, but in my experience, people this determined usually have deeper motivations than mere suspicion. I thought back to Barbara's consistent undermining of our relationship, her thinly veiled disapproval that began long before any supposed signs of infidelity. Does my wife know about this new investigator? Mercer shook his head. I don't believe so. Mrs. Reynolds told me she had relieved me of my services at her daughter's request, but would be continuing her own fact-finding independently. Why are you telling me this? Why not just walk away? He was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. I've been in this business for 15 years, seen plenty of marriages end because of real infidelity. But I've also seen relationships destroyed by suspicion and manipulation. He tucked the notebook back into his jacket. I don't like being part of the latter. I studied him, searching for ulterior motives and finding none obvious. What exactly do you think I should do with this information? That's your decision. He stood, signaling the end of our conversation. But if I were you, I'd accelerate whatever plans you have for that gallery showing. Before Vega delivers his evidence to Mrs. Reynolds, he handed me a business card. My direct line if you need it. Good luck, Mr. Wilson. I watched him walk away, his warning echoing in my mind. Barbara had escalated beyond mere suspicion to active sabotage. And now she had someone manufacturing evidence against me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Getting out later than expected. Can we push back an hour? I texted back immediately. No problem. See you at 7 at the gallery, 415 NW 10th Ave. It's important. Her response came quickly. The Martinez Gallery, why there? Trust me, please. It'll make sense when you see it. There was a long pause before her reply. Okay, see you at 7. I stared at the screen, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Should I have told her about meeting Mercer? About Barbara hiring a second investigator? But that would mean explaining everything over text, without the powerful visual of her paintings hanging in the gallery, the concrete proof that my secretive behavior had been for her, not against her. I called Emily immediately. Change of plans, I said when she answered. I'm meeting Sarah at the gallery at 7. Can you make sure everything's ready? And can you be there? Of course. What's happened? I gave her a condensed version of my meeting with Mercer, including the warning about Vega. That's disturbing, Emily said when I finished. Do you think this Vega person is watching you now? The thought hadn't occurred to me. I glanced around the park, suddenly paranoid. I don't know, maybe. Come straight to the gallery. I'll call Gina, make sure she can open up early for us. I drove to the Pearl District with one eye on my rearview mirror, analyzing every car that stayed behind me for more than a few blocks. By the time I parked near the gallery, my nerves were frayed from the constant vigilance. Gina Martinez greeted me at the side entrance, ushering me quickly inside. Emily explained the situation, how incredibly dramatic. Her tone suggested she found the whole thing more intriguing than alarming. Is everything ready? I asked, following her through the back room toward the main space. Better than ready. We finished the lighting installation this morning. The effect is quite stunning. She wasn't exaggerating. As we entered the main gallery, I saw Sarah's 3 paintings mounted on the feature wall, perfectly illuminated to highlight their vivid colors and detailed brushwork. They were breathtaking. The campus lake where we'd met, captured in autumn. Light, the garden where I'd proposed, cherry blossoms floating on a gentle breeze, and the view from our first apartment, a sunset transforming the city skyline into silhouettes against a blazing sky. They're beautiful, I said softly. Your wife is very talented, Gina agreed. These would sell immediately if they were available. Emily arrived 20 minutes later, slightly out of breath. Traffic was a nightmare. Is everything set? Just waiting for Sarah, I confirmed, checking my watch. 6:30. Gina, would it be possible to have some privacy when she arrives? Just initially, until I've explained everything. Of course. I'll be in my office. Just knock when you're ready for the official tour. As Gina disappeared into the back, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. Are you going to tell Sarah about the second investigator? Eventually, But first I want her to understand why I've been so secretive. Once she sees her work displayed, the rest will be easier to explain." Emily didn't look convinced. "Mike, I know you want this to be perfect, but with everything that's happening, maybe you should just lay all the cards on the table. No more secrets, no more surprises." "That's exactly what I'm doing tonight," I insisted, showing her that every secret, every late night, every hushed phone call was for this moment. "And the community garden project?" "That too. Full transparency from now on." Emily's phone chimed with a text. She checked it, her expression changing subtly. "Sarah's running a few minutes late, finishing up with her client." "That's fine. More time to make sure everything's perfect." I straightened one of the descriptive placards beside the paintings, which featured quotes from Sarah's artist statement from years ago. Emily watched me, concern evident in her eyes. "You really love her, don't you?" "More than anything. These past few weeks have been torture, knowing she doubted that." "Well, for what it's worth, I never believed you were having an affair. Not for a second." I smiled gratefully. "That means a lot." As 7 o'clock approached, nervous energy had me pacing the length of the gallery. Emily stationed herself by the window, watching for Sarah's arrival. "Mike," she called suddenly, "there's someone taking photos from a car across the street." My heart raced as I joined her at the window. Sure enough, a dark sedan was parked with a clear view of the gallery entrance. A man with a professional camera pointed our way. "Vega," I muttered, "has to be." "What's he doing?" "Documenting me entering the gallery with you, I'd guess. Creating his evidence for Barbara." Emily stepped back from the window. "This is getting out of hand. We should call the police." "And say what?" "That my mother-in-law hired someone to take photos in a public place." I shook my head. "Let him watch. In an hour, none of this will matter. Sarah will know the truth." At 7:10, I was checking my phone for messages when Emily gasped. "Oh no." I looked up to see her staring out the window again, her expression horrified. "What is it?" "Barbara. She's here, with Sarah." Sure enough, Sarah's blue Honda was pulling up across the street, Barbara in the passenger seat. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in Sarah's posture as she parked. "What the hell is she doing here?" I moved toward the door, but Emily caught my arm. "Wait, there's someone approaching their car, the photographer." We watched as the man, Vega, presumably, intercepted Sarah and Barbara as they exited the vehicle. He showed them something on a tablet or phone, gesturing toward the gallery. Barbara's expression was grimly satisfied, while Sarah's face crumpled in what looked like pain. "He's showing her the photos," Emily realized, "whatever he's manufactured." I yanked the door open, determined to intervene before Vega could poison Sarah further with his lies, but I was too late. Sarah was already walking rapidly back to her car, Barbara following with a supportive arm around her shoulders. Vega stood watching, making no attempt to hide his camera or his interest in the unfolding drama. "Sarah!" I called, jogging across the street. She looked up, and the raw hurt in her eyes stopped me cold. "Don't," she said, her voice breaking. "Just don't, Mike. Whatever he showed you, it's not what you think." Barbara stepped between us. "She's seen enough, Michael. Photos don't lie." "They do when they're manipulated," I shot back. "When they're taken out of context by someone you hired specifically to create false evidence." Sarah's eyes widened, shifting between her mother and me. "What is he talking about?" Barbara waved dismissively. "He's desperate, trying to confuse you. The pictures speak for themselves." "What pictures?" I demanded. "Show me what he gave you." "I can't even look at them again," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "You and Emily in there." She gestured toward the gallery. "The way you were looking at each other. The way you touched her arm." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but Sarah's pain was too real. "Yes, Emily is in there. She's been helping me with your anniversary surprise. Those paintings in there? They're yours, Sarah. I've been working with the gallery to showcase your work. Confusion flickered across her face. What? It's true, Emily confirmed, having joined us on the sidewalk. That's what all the secrecy has been about. Mike wanted to surprise you, to help you reconnect with your painting. Sarah's gaze darted between us, uncertainty replacing some of the hurt. My paintings are in there? See for yourself, I urged, softly. Please. Barbara tightened her grip on Sarah's arm. Don't fall for this. It's an obvious cover story they concocted when they realized they'd been caught. She turned to Vega, who was watching the scene unfold with detached interest. Show her the other photos. Vega stepped forward, tablet in hand, but I moved faster, positioning myself between him and Sarah. Before you look at whatever he's prepared to show you, you should know that your mother fired Jack Mercer when he refused to fabricate evidence against me. Mercer contacted me today to warn me that she'd hired someone who would give her exactly what she wanted to see. I looked directly at Barbara. Someone who specializes in creative documentation. Sarah pulled free from her mother's grasp. Mom, is that true? Barbara's composure slipped for just a moment before she recovered. Of course not. I hired a professional to uncover the truth, that's all. Then why did Mercer call Mike to warn him? Emily asked. Who knows what his motivation was, Barbara dismissed. Perhaps Michael paid him. Or perhaps, I countered, he has professional integrity and didn't want to be part of destroying our marriage based on your suspicions. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, as if blocking out the competing narratives. When she opened them, she addressed Vega directly. Did my mother specifically ask you to find evidence of an affair? Vega glanced at Barbara, then back at Sarah, his expression calculated. Mrs. Reynolds was concerned about your husband's fidelity. I was hired to investigate. That's not what I asked, Sarah pressed. Did she tell you to find proof he was cheating, regardless of whether it was true? The way Vega shifted his weight told me everything. He was a professional, but not necessarily committed to Barbara's cause, especially now that he was directly implicated. I was given clear expectations about what documentation would be considered satisfactory, he finally said, choosing his words carefully. Sarah turned to her mother, something hardening in her expression. How could you? I was protecting you, Barbara insisted, just like I've always protected you. By manufacturing evidence against my husband, by trying to destroy my marriage. He's not good enough for you, Sarah. He never was. The raw truth of Barbara's motivation hung in the air between them. This had never been about suspected infidelity. It was about Barbara's fundamental disapproval of me, her belief that her daughter had settled for less than she deserved. That's not your decision to make, Sarah said quietly. It never was. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. The paintings? That's really what all this has been about? That and the community garden project at work. Come inside. See for yourself. For a terrible moment, I thought she might refuse, might get in her car and drive away. But then she nodded once, decisive. Show me. I offered my hand, and after a brief hesitation, she took it. As we walked toward the gallery, I was acutely aware of Barbara watching us, her carefully constructed plan unraveling. Sarah, her voice was sharp, commanding, don't do this. He's manipulating you just like your father did to me. Sarah paused, turning back to her mother. This isn't about you and Dad. It's about you not trusting me to make my own choices, to live my own life. She took a deep breath. I think you should go home now, Mom. We'll talk tomorrow. Barbara's face flushed with anger or embarrassment, or both. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you discover I was right all along. She turned to Vega. We're leaving. As they walked away, Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. Let's go inside, she said. her voice steadier than I expected. "I want to see my paintings." Gina had tactfully disappeared when she heard the commotion outside, leaving the gallery quiet and empty as we entered. Emily hovered near the door, uncertain. "Should I go?" she asked. "Give you two some privacy?" Sarah shook her head. "Stay. I think I need to understand exactly what's been happening." I led Sarah to the feature wall where her paintings hung, watching as she took in the sight of her work, professionally displayed, perfectly lit. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes wide. "You did this?" she whispered. "For me? You stopped painting," I said simply. "I wanted to give that back to you." She moved closer to the paintings, studying each one in turn. "How? When?" I explained everything. The chance meeting with Gina, enlisting Emily to create the fake commission, the evening spent at the gallery preparing for the showing. As I spoke, Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something like wonder. "All those late nights," she murmured, "the secret phone calls. Planning this and working on the community garden project, which is also happening, by the way. We secured full funding yesterday." She turned to me, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought you were pulling away. I thought you didn't love me anymore." "Never." I stepped closer, taking her hands in mine. "Everything I did was because I love you. I just wanted it to be a surprise for our anniversary. And my mother." She trailed off, pain flickering across her features. "Has her own issues that have nothing to do with us." I finished gently. Emily approached, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "For what it's worth, keeping this secret was torture for Mike. He hated seeing you doubt him, but he was so determined to give you this moment." Sarah looked between us, then back at her paintings. "I can't believe you did all this. That both of you did this." "There's more," I said. "The opening reception is scheduled for Saturday, our actual anniversary. Gina's invited several critics and collectors. It's a real showing, Sarah, not just a gesture." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll forgive me for all the secrecy, for not just telling you when things started getting complicated." "There's nothing to forgive." She reached up, cupping my face in her hands. "I'm the one who should be asking forgiveness for doubting you, for letting my mother's suspicions become my own." "You had reasons to worry," I acknowledged. "I wasn't being honest about where I was spending my time. But your dishonesty was to create something beautiful." She glanced at her paintings. Again, mine was just fear, insecurity. I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. No more secrets, no more doubts from either of us. She nodded against my chest, then pulled back to look up at me. "I love you, Mike. I'm so sorry for everything that's happened." "I love you too, always have." Emily discreetly moved toward the door. "I think this is my cue to give you two some privacy." Sarah turned, reaching for her friend's hand. "Thank you, Em, for helping with all of this, for believing in us even when I didn't." "What are best friends for?" Emily smiled. "Call me tomorrow, okay?" After she left, Sarah and I stood together in the quiet gallery, her paintings glowing on the wall before us, the chaos of the past weeks finally giving way to understanding. "Will you tell me everything now?" she asked softly. "All the details." I missed while I was busy suspecting the worst. I led her to a bench, positioned perfectly for viewing the artwork. "I'll tell you everything, and then we'll figure out how to handle your mother." "Tomorrow," she decided. "Tonight is just for us." As we sat together in the gallery, I began the story from the beginning. My concerns about her giving up painting, the initial idea for the showing, every step that had led us to this moment. With each revelation, the tension in her body eased further, her smile grew more natural, her eyes more clear. Whatever damage Barbara had attempted to inflict on our marriage hadn't succeeded. If anything, we were emerging stronger, with a deeper appreciation for what we'd almost lost. There would be difficult conversations ahead, boundaries to establish with Barbara, trust to fully rebuild between us. But sitting there with Sarah, watching her gaze at her paintings with renewed passion, in her eyes, I knew we would face it all together. The private investigator had discovered not an affair, but a husband, trying desperately to reconnect his wife with her art, with her passion, with the person she had been before life's pressures had dimmed her creative spirit. In trying to destroy our marriage, Barbara had inadvertently strengthened it. And in that moment, surrounded by Sarah's beautiful work, I couldn't help but feel something like gratitude for the crisis that had forced us to fight for what mattered most. The gallery shimmered with soft light and quiet conversation as Sarah's paintings took center stage. Every few minutes, someone would approach us with genuine admiration for her work, and I'd watch her eyes light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. 3 days had passed since the confrontation outside the Martinez Gallery, 3 days of healing conversations and renewed connection between us. We'd decided to proceed with the opening as planned, though with a significantly modified guest list. Barbara's invitation had been rescinded. "Your use of light is extraordinary," commented an older gentleman in a tweed jacket, gesturing towards Sarah's painting of the campus lake. "The way you've captured the autumn reflections on the water, masterful." "Thank you," Sarah replied, the slight flush on her cheeks betraying how deeply the praise affected her. "That location is special to me. It's where my husband and I first met. The emotional connection shows in every brushstroke," he said, handing her a business card. "I curate for several private collections. I'd love to discuss your future work when you're ready." As he moved away, Sarah turned to me with wide eyes. "Did that really just happen?" I squeezed her hand. "The first of many, I'm sure." "Gina." Martinez approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast to our featured artist," she announced, handing them to us. "Sarah, I've already had inquiries about commissioning new pieces. You've made quite an impression tonight." "I can't believe it," Sarah said, her voice tinged with wonder. "A month ago, I wasn't even painting anymore." "And now you're not going to stop," I predicted. "The 3rd bedroom is officially your studio from now on. No more designing logos for tech startups unless you want to." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "We can't afford that, Mike." "Actually, we can." I hadn't planned to share this news tonight, wanting the focus to remain on her artistic achievement, but the moment felt right. "Remember that community garden project I've been working on? The board was so impressed with the funding we secured that they've promoted me to Director of Community Initiatives. It comes with a substantial raise." Her face lit up. "Mike, that's incredible. Why didn't you tell me?" "It just became official yesterday. I wanted tonight to be about you." Gina cleared her throat. "Speaking of which, there's a reporter from Portland Arts Monthly who'd like a few words with the artist. Are you up for it, Sarah?" Sarah looked momentarily panicked, then squared her shoulders. "Yes, absolutely." As Gina led her away to meet, the reporter Carlos sidled up beside me, champagne in hand. "Quite a turnaround from where things stood last week." "Night and day," I agreed, watching Sarah across the room, animated as she discussed her technique with the journalist. "Though we still have one major issue to resolve." "The mother-in-law from hell," Carlos nodded. "What's the latest there?" Radio silence. Sarah called her the morning after everything happened, told her we needed space. Barbara hasn't attempted contact since. "That can't last forever." "No," I admitted. "But it's giving us time to get solid footing before we deal with her." Emily joined us, looking elegant in a simple black dress. "The turnout is amazing. I've overheard at least 3 serious collectors discussing Sarah's potential." "Thanks for everything, Em," I said. "None of this would have happened without you." She waved away my gratitude. Please, it's been the most excitement in my life since college, though I could have done without being cast as the other woman. We all laughed, the tension of the past weeks finally dissipating enough to find humor in the situation. Emily sobered first, her expression turning serious. Have you heard anything more from Jack Mercer? About that creep, Vega? I shook my head. Nothing. I'm hoping Barbara paid them both off, and that's the end of it. Don't count on it, Carlos warned. People like that don't just disappear when their plans fail. He was right, of course. The confrontation outside the gallery had exposed Barbara's manipulation, but it hadn't addressed the deeper issue, her fundamental belief that I wasn't good enough for her daughter, that our marriage was a mistake Sarah needed to be rescued from. That kind of conviction wouldn't simply evaporate because one scheme had been thwarted. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I said, unwilling to let concerns about Barbara dampen the evening. Tonight is about celebrating. The rest of the opening unfolded like a dream. Sarah sold 2 paintings. We'd decided to make them available after all, since she was inspired to create new work for our home. A local arts foundation representative invited her to participate in their annual showcase. And most importantly, I watched my wife step confidently back into her identity as an artist, reclaiming a part of herself that had been dormant for too long. As the last guests departed and Gina locked the gallery doors behind them, Sarah collapsed onto a bench, kicking off her heels with a sigh of relief. I can't feel my feet anymore, she complained, though her smile remained radiant. But I don't even care. I sat beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. You were amazing tonight. It's all because of you, she said, leaning into me. What you did for me, Mike. I don't know if I can ever properly thank you. Seeing you like this, happy, passionate, creating again, that's all the thanks I need. She turned to face me, her expression serious. When I think about how close I came to throwing everything away, to believing the worst about you because of my mother's manipulations. She shook her head. I'm so ashamed. Don't be, I said firmly. Barbara exploited real issues between us. We'd grown distant. We weren't communicating. My secrecy, even with good intentions, created the perfect opening for her to plant doubts. But I should have trusted you. After 9 years together, I should have known better. We both made mistakes, I acknowledged. The important thing is where we go from here. Sarah nodded, then glanced at her watch. It's after midnight, officially our anniversary. I pulled a small wrapped package from my jacket pocket. I was wondering when you'd notice. Her eyes widened. You got me a gift after all this? She gestured around the gallery. This was always the plan, I reminded her. The gallery showing and a proper anniversary present. She accepted the package, carefully unwrapping it to reveal a velvet jewelry box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with 3 small charms, a paintbrush, a lake, and a garden gate. It's beautiful, she whispered, running her fingers over the charms. The 3 paintings. 3 pieces of our story, I corrected, taking the necklace and moving behind her to fasten it around her neck. Where we met, where I proposed, and our first home together. She touched the charms resting against her collarbone, then turned to kiss me deeply. I love you, Mike Wilson, more than ever. I love you too. Happy anniversary. We left the gallery hand in hand, stepping into the cool night air. The Portland skyline glittered around us, reminiscent of Sarah's 3rd painting, our first apartment. View. Everything felt right in a way it hadn't for months, perhaps longer. Let's walk for a bit, Sarah suggested. It's too beautiful to go home yet. We strolled through the quiet streets of the Pearl District, passing darkened storefronts, and the occasional late-night cafe. Sarah talked excitedly about new painting ideas, about possibly cutting back her graphic design work to focus more on her art. I listened, content to simply witness her rekindled passion. We were passing a small park when Sarah suddenly stopped, her grip on my hand tightening. "Mike," she said quietly, nodding toward a bench illuminated by a street lamp. Barbara sat alone, her silver hair gleaming in the artificial light, her posture rigid as always. She hadn't noticed us yet. "We can turn around," I offered immediately. "Take another route home." Sarah hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. "No, this conversation needs to happen eventually. Might as well be now." "Are you sure? Tonight has been perfect. We don't need to risk spoiling it." She touched the charms on her necklace as if drawing strength from them. "I'm sure." We approached slowly, giving Barbara time to notice us. When she did, her expression cycled rapidly through surprise, defiance, and finally a carefully constructed neutrality. "Sarah," she acknowledged. Then more stiffly, "Michael." "Mom!" Sarah remained standing, maintaining the higher ground both literally and figuratively. "What are you doing here?" "I attended your showing," Barbara admitted. "I stayed in the back, left before you could see me." This revelation clearly caught Sarah off guard. "Why?" "Because I wanted to see it. Because despite everything, I'm still your mother." She glanced at me, then back to Sarah. "Your work was impressive. I'd forgotten how talented you are." The compliment seemed to cost her, each word carefully measured. "Thank you," Sarah replied cautiously. "But that doesn't explain why you're sitting here now, blocks from the gallery, hours after the event ended." Barbara sighed, suddenly, looking older than her 62 years. "I suppose I was gathering courage to speak with you, to apologize." Now it was my turn to be surprised. In the 7 years I'd known Barbara Reynolds, I'd never heard her apologize for anything. "For what specifically?" Sarah asked, her tone making clear that a general apology wouldn't suffice. "For hiring the investigators," Barbara began, "for attempting to manipulate your marriage, for not respecting your choices." Each admission seemed physically painful for her. "And?" Sarah pressed. Barbara's jaw tightened. "And for allowing my own past to color how I view your relationship." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying. Her mother. "Why, Mom? Why go to such extreme lengths? Did you really hate Mike that much?" "It was never about hating Michael specifically," Barbara replied, not meeting my eyes. "It was about protecting you from what I went through." "Dad's affair," Sarah said. "But Mike isn't Dad, and I'm not you. I know that, intellectually." Barbara smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. "But when I started seeing signs that reminded me of your father, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the distraction, I couldn't help myself. It was like watching history repeat itself." "So you decided to accelerate the process, force a crisis that might not have ever happened naturally." "I decided to expose what I believed was already happening," Barbara corrected. "I was wrong. I see that now." Her admission hung in the air between us. I remained silent, understanding that this conversation needed to happen primarily between mother and daughter. "How do we move forward from here?" Sarah finally asked. "Because I won't cut you out of my life completely, Mom. But I also can't have you interfering in my marriage." Barbara nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that, about what healthy boundaries might look like." She hesitated. "I've started seeing someone, a therapist." The admission clearly stunned Sarah. "You have?" "Dr. Winters. She specializes in divorce trauma. Apparently, I have some unresolved issues surrounding your father's departure." The self-deprecating tone was so unlike Barbara that I almost wondered if we were speaking to an imposter. "That's good," Sarah managed. "I think that could be really helpful." "I hope so." Barbara stood, gathering her handbag. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness, Sarah, from either of you." She finally looked at me directly. "But I am truly sorry for the pain I caused. You clearly love my daughter very much. The gallery showing made that evident, even to me. I nodded, not quite ready to verbally accept her apology, but acknowledging the effort it had taken her to make it. Perhaps we could have lunch next week, Barbara suggested to Sarah. Just to talk, no agenda. Sarah glanced at me and I gave her a subtle nod. This was her decision to make. Okay, she agreed. I'll text you. Good, that's good. Barbara straightened her jacket, regaining some of her usual composure. Congratulations on the showing and... She hesitated. Happy anniversary. With that, she walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement, her back as straight as ever. When she was out of earshot, Sarah released a long breath. Well, that was unexpected. Completely, I agreed. Do you believe her? About the therapy? Oddly, yes. It's so out of character that it almost has to be true. She shook her head in wonder. In all my life, I've never heard her admit she might be wrong about anything. People can surprise you, I said, thinking of Jack Mercer and his unexpected integrity, sometimes even positively. Sarah leaned against me as we continued our walk home. Do you think we can ever really trust her again? Trust takes time to rebuild. We should know. We just went through it ourselves. But we had 9 years of history to draw on. A foundation worth saving. I considered this. What's your earliest memory of your mom before the divorce? Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. She used to read to me every night. No matter how busy she was, she always made time for bedtime stories. She did all the voices, turned it into a whole performance. That's who she was before your father's betrayal changed her, I pointed out. Maybe that person is still in there somewhere. Maybe Dr. Winters can help her find her way back. Maybe, Sarah conceded, though she sounded skeptical. But we'll need very clear boundaries in the meantime. Absolutely, and no more private. Investigators. She laughed, the sound light and free. Definitely no more investigators. We walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, both processing the unexpected encounter with Barbara. When we reached our front porch, Sarah paused before entering. Despite everything, the suspicion, the tension, my mother's interference, this has been the most meaningful anniversary we've ever had, she said softly. Is that strange? I shook my head. Not strange at all. We almost lost each other. That makes what we have all the more precious. Promise me something? Anything. And next year, let's go with something simple. Dinner and a movie, maybe. I laughed, pulling her close. Deal. Inside, our house felt different somehow. Warmer, more like home than it had in months. Sarah kicked off her shoes and padded into the kitchen, retrieving a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. One more toast, she proposed, pouring 2 glasses. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And to old foundations. As we settled onto the couch, Sarah curled against my side. I felt a profound gratitude for everything that had transpired, even the painful parts. Without the crisis, without the forced confrontation of our issues, we might have continued, drifting apart, losing each other by degrees so subtle we wouldn't have noticed until it was too late. I was thinking, Sarah said, tracing patterns on my arm, about what you said regarding the community garden project, about your promotion. What about it? You mentioned a substantial raise. She sat up, facing me with newfound excitement. What if we used some of that money to convert the garage into a proper art studio? Real north-facing windows, proper ventilation, storage for canvases. You're serious about getting back into painting full-time? I am. Tonight confirmed it. I've been denying a central part of myself for too long. She took my hand. Would you support that? It would mean some financial adjustments. Sarah, watching you talk about your art tonight, seeing how alive, I'd support anything that brings that version of you back permanently." Her smile was radiant. "I already have ideas for a new series, Portland neighborhoods at different times of day, the changing character of the city through light and shadow." "They sound amazing." "And what about you? Tell me more about this." "New position, Director of Community Initiatives, sounds impressive." I described the expanded role, the additional staff I'd be managing, the increased budget for environmental and community projects across the city. As I spoke, I realized how long it had been since we'd shared our professional aspirations with genuine interest and enthusiasm. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah said when I finished. "You've built something meaningful, something that makes real difference in people's lives." "Look, we both have," I replied, "or are building in your case." She yawned, the long day finally catching up to her. "Take me to bed, Mr. Director." I swept her into my arms, carrying her to our bedroom as she laughed in surprise. "Very romantic." "I'm feeling inspired," I admitted, setting her gently on the bed. "Having an artist wife brings out my dramatic side." The next morning, sunshine streamed through our bedroom windows, waking me from the deepest sleep I'd had in weeks. Sarah's side of the bed was empty, but before I could wonder where she'd gone, I heard movement from the spare bedroom. Soon, to be her studio. I found her there, still in her pajamas, surveying the space with the focused expression I recognized from her creative planning process. "The light is actually decent in here," she observed when she noticed me in the doorway. "We'd need to rearrange things, and I'd want an easel by that window, but it could work until the garage conversion." "Good morning to you too," I teased. "Coffee before renovation plans." She grinned sheepishly. "Sorry, got inspired early." In the kitchen, as I prepared breakfast, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. She checked it, her expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked. "It's Jack Mercer," she said, surprising me. "He wants to meet with both of us." I set down the spatula. "Did he say why?" "Just that he has information we should know." She showed me the text. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, certain developments have come to my attention regarding Barbara Reynolds and Dominic Vega. I believe it would be in your best interest to be aware of these matters. Available to meet at your convenience. Jack Mercer." "What do you think?" Sarah asked, watching my reaction. I considered our options. "After everything that's happened, I'm inclined to hear what he has to say. He was honest with us before when he didn't have to be." "I agree." She texted a response, suggesting we meet that afternoon. Over breakfast, we discussed potential spaces for Sarah's temporary studio, deliberately avoiding speculation about Mercer's cryptic message. Whatever Barbara might be planning now, we were determined not to let it dominate our lives again. Mercer suggested meeting at a small coffee shop in the Hawthorne district, neutral territory, away from both our home and Barbara's condo. We arrived early, securing a quiet corner table with good visibility of the entrance. "Are you nervous?" Sarah asked, stirring her latte absently. "A little," I admitted. "But whatever it is, we'll handle it together this time." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Together. Jack Mercer arrived precisely on time, dressed in the same unremarkable blazer and jeans I'd seen him in before. He nodded in greeting, ordered a black coffee at the counter, then joined us at the table. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, his deep voice pitched low for privacy. "I apologize for the mysterious text, but I felt this conversation should happen in person." "What's going on?" Sarah asked directly. "Is my mother planning something else?" Mercer sipped his coffee before answering. "Not exactly, but there have been developments you should be aware of." He removed a manila envelope from his jacket, the professional's preferred method of information delivery, apparently. "Dominic Vega approached me 3 days ago, offering to sell me information." "What kind of information?" I asked. "Communications. Between himself and Mrs. Reynolds. Text messages, emails, recorded phone calls." Mercer slid the envelope toward us. It seems Vega has a policy of documenting his interactions with clients, particularly when they request ethically questionable services. Sarah stared at the envelope without touching it. Why would he sell this to you? Money, primarily, Mercer replied frankly. Vega isn't bound by the same professional code I follow. He's facing some financial difficulties and thought I might pay for material that could damage a competitor. And did you? I asked. I did, but not for the reasons he assumed. Mercer nodded toward the envelope. The communications in there make it clear that your mother specifically requested fabricated evidence of an affair, regardless of what my surveillance actually showed. She explicitly asked for manipulated photos that would convince you your husband was unfaithful. Sarah's face paled. Why are you giving this to us? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because Vega is attempting to blackmail your mother with the same information. That explained the urgency. He's threatening to expose her if she doesn't pay. Mercer nodded. He's demanding $50,000 to keep the communications private. Mrs. Reynolds has until tomorrow to decide. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. This is insane. It's like being caught in some ridiculous soap opera. Unfortunately, it's all too real, Mercer said. Vega is not someone who makes idle threats. If your mother refuses to pay, he will release those communications, possibly to you, possibly more broadly. He intimated that certain colleagues of Mrs. Reynolds at her law firm might find the information interesting. I glanced at Sarah, understanding the implications. Barbara was a senior partner at a prestigious Portland law firm. Being exposed for hiring someone to fabricate evidence could have serious professional consequences. Why are you helping us? Sarah asked Mercer. What do you get out of this? He considered the question seriously. I've been in this business for 15 years. Most of what I do is document the worst moments in people's lives: infidelity, deception, betrayal. It's rare that I get to contribute to resolving a situation positively. He gestured to the envelope. This gives you options, knowledge, the power to make informed decisions. Sarah reluctantly took the envelope, holding it like it might bite. Thank you, I think. What would you recommend we do? I asked. Mercer shrugged slightly. That depends on what you want. If you're looking to completely sever ties with Mrs. Reynolds, those documents provide ample justification. If you're seeking leverage to enforce boundaries, they offer that as well. Or you could warn her about Vega's blackmail attempt. Your relationship with your mother is complex. I wouldn't presume to advise on the best course of action. Sarah and I exchanged looks, a silent communication passing between us. We'd need to discuss this privately before deciding anything. Is there anything else we should know? I asked. Mercer. Just one thing. Vega doesn't know I've spoken to you. He assumes I purchased the information for my own purposes. He stood, preparing to leave. Whatever you decide to do, I'd suggest doing it quickly. His deadline to your mother is 5 p.m. tomorrow. After he departed, Sarah and I sat in silence, the unopened envelope between us. I don't know if I want to see what's in there, Sarah finally said. I already know my mother tried to sabotage our marriage. Do I need to know exactly how far she was willing to go? It might help us make a decision about how to handle this, I pointed out, but it's your call. She's your mother. Sarah took a deep breath, then opened the envelope and removed a small stack of printed emails and text message screenshots. We read through them together, my stomach tightening with each exchange. Needs something convincing. Photos of him with the Chen woman, appearing intimate. Can you deliver? Barbara had written. My surveillance shows nothing improper between them, only professional meetings related to gallery. Vega had replied. I'm not paying for what isn't there. I need evidence I can use to convince my daughter. Be creative if necessary. Barbara's. Response had been unambiguous. The exchanges grew increasingly explicit in their instructions. Barbara had specified scenarios she wanted documented: late-night meetings, physical contact, entries to Emily's apartment building, which I had never visited. She had even suggested specific dates when these observations should have occurred. Dates when I had legitimate alibis. "I can't believe this," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "She was deliberately manufacturing evidence to destroy our marriage. Even after you explained about the gallery showing, even after she saw the paintings." "The question is, what do we do now?" I said gently. "Vega's going to either get his money or release this information." Sarah stared out the coffee shop window, conflict evident in her expression. Despite everything, Barbara was still her mother, still the woman who had raised her, who had read her bedtime stories with all the voices. "We warn her," she finally decided, "not to protect her, but because it's the right thing to do. What she does with the information is up to her." I nodded, respecting her decision. "Do you want to call her now?" "No." Sarah gathered the documents, returning them to the envelope. "This needs to happen in person. I need to see her face when I show her these. Do you want me to come with you?" She considered this. "Yes, but let me do the talking." We drove to Barbara's Lake Oswego condo. Intense silence, each lost in our own thoughts. I wondered how different things might have been if Barbara had simply accepted me from the beginning, if she had channeled her protective instincts into supporting our marriage rather than looking for flaws to exploit. Barbara answered her door, wearing reading glasses and a cashmere sweater, surprise evident in her expression at seeing both of us on her doorstep. "Sarah, Michael, I wasn't expecting you until next week." She stepped back, inviting us in with a gesture that seemed more automatic than genuine. Her condo was immaculate as always, with carefully curated furniture and artwork that spoke of wealth and refined taste. Sarah and I sat on the stiff, formal sofa while Barbara took the armchair opposite, removing her reading glasses. "This isn't a social call," Sarah began without preamble. "We're here because we have information you need to know." Barbara's posture stiffened. "What kind of information?" Sarah placed Mercer's envelope on the glass coffee table between them. "Dominic, Vega is blackmailing you. He has recordings and written communications detailing your instructions to fabricate evidence against Mike. He's demanding $50,000 by tomorrow evening." The color drained from Barbara's face. For once, she seemed genuinely caught. Off guard, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "How do you know this?" "Jack Mercer told us. Vega tried to sell him the information." Sarah pushed the envelope toward her mother. "These are copies of some of the communications. There's apparently much more." Barbara didn't touch the envelope. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because despite everything you've done, you're still my mother, and because Vega is a predator who shouldn't profit from this situation." Sarah's voice remained steady, controlled. "What you do with this information is your decision. Pay him, don't pay him, that's your choice. But you should know that we've seen these documents. We know exactly how far you were willing to go." Barbara's gaze dropped to the envelope, then back to her daughter. "I've already apologized for my actions." "You apologized for hiring investigators and interfering in my marriage," Sarah corrected. "You didn't mention explicitly requesting falsified evidence." She leaned forward. "What I can't understand is why, even after you knew about the gallery showing, even after you saw Mike's true intentions, you still pushed Vega to manufacture evidence against him. Why?" For the first time in our troubled history, I saw something like shame cross Barbara's features. "Because I was wrong," she admitted quietly. "Because I had committed so fully to my narrative about your marriage that I couldn't accept being mistaken." She sighed. "And because I've spent 20 years believing that all men eventually betray the women who love them, the way your father betrayed me." "That's not an excuse," Sarah said, but her tone had softened slightly. "No, it's not," Barbara agreed. "It's an explanation. A poor one." She finally took the envelope, not opening it. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll handle." "Vega, what will you do?" I asked, breaking my silence. Barbara considered me for a long moment. "Not pay him, certainly. I won't be extorted." A hint of her usual steel returned to her voice. "I made a serious error in judgment, but I'm still a lawyer. I know how to handle people like Vega." Sarah stood, signaling the end of our visit. "Just be careful. He doesn't seem like someone who makes empty threats." "I've faced worse adversaries in my career," Barbara said, rising as well. She hesitated, then added, "This information, what do you intend to do with it?" "Nothing," Sarah replied, "as long as you respect the boundaries we discussed. No more interference in our marriage, no more investigators, no more manipulation." Barbara nodded slowly. "You have my word." As we prepared to leave, Barbara called Sarah's name. "For what it's worth, your father did love you. His issues were with me, never with you." Sarah paused, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected reference to her father. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because in trying to protect you from experiencing my pain, I've caused you different pain." Barbara's eyes were suspiciously bright. "And because Dr. Winters says I need to stop projecting my past onto your future." It was perhaps the most genuine moment I'd ever witnessed from Barbara Reynolds. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of Sarah's studio, watching as golden afternoon light bathed her canvas. The garage conversion had been completed just 2 weeks ago, and already the space felt alive with creative energy. Paintings in various stages lined the walls, sketches were pinned to a large cork board, and the scent of oils and turpentine hung in the air. Sarah was so absorbed in her work that she hadn't noticed me, her brush moving with confident strokes as she added depth to a cityscape of downtown Portland at sunset. "That's going to be your best one yet," I said quietly, not wanting to startle her. She glanced over her shoulder with a smile that still made my heart skip. "You say that about all of them. And I'm right, every time." I approached, careful not to disturb her workspace, and placed a mug of tea on the small table beside her easel. "Thought you might need this. You've been out here for hours." "Has it been that long?" She set down her brush and stretched, rolling her shoulders to release the tension. "I completely lost track of time." "The mark of doing what you love," I observed, admiring the painting's progress. The skyline was rendered in vibrant oranges and purples, the Willamette River reflecting the day's last light. It was part of her Portland Perspectives series, which had garnered significant attention following her debut showing. Sarah took a sip of tea, then set it down to wrap her arms around my waist. "Thank you for making this possible," she said, gesturing to the studio around us, all of it. "You did the hard part," I reminded her. "I just converted a garage." She laughed, resting her head against my chest. "How was your day? How's the garden project coming along?" "Incredibly well. We broke ground on the 3rd site. Today, the mayor came for the photo op, brought the press. Great visibility for the Conservation Alliance. I saw it on the local news feed. You looked very official with your hard hat and shovel." I grinned. "Carlos says I'm becoming the face of urban conservation in Portland. He's threatening to put me on our brochures, as he should. You've transformed the program." Sarah stepped back, studying me with pride. "Director Wilson, community hero. Now you're just mocking me." "Never." She kissed me softly. "I'm genuinely proud of you. You're making real change happen in this city." We'd both found our footing in the months since the gallery showing. Sarah with her renewed artistic career, me with my expanded role at the Conservation Alliance. The community garden project had expanded from 3 sites to 7, with funding secured for 3 more. Sarah had sold 11 paintings and received commissions for 6 more, allowing her to scale back her graphic design work significantly. "Dinner in 30?" I asked. "I'm making that pasta you like. Perfect, let me just clean up here." As I headed back to the house, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from Emily. "Have you seen the news? Just broke. Call me." I dialed her. Immediately, curiosity piqued. "Have you been online in the last hour?" Emily asked without preamble when she answered. "No, I've been at the new garden site all afternoon. What's happening?" "Barbara's law firm. It's all over the legal blogs. There's been a massive shake-up." My stomach tightened instinctively at the mention of Barbara. Our relationship with Sarah's mother had been cautiously cordial over the past 6 months. Carefully scheduled lunches every few weeks, brief phone calls, always with clear boundaries. Barbara had been making genuine efforts in therapy, according to Sarah, though progress was slow and fragile. "What kind of shake-up?" I asked. "3 senior partners forced to resign, including Barbara. Some kind of ethics scandal involving fabricated evidence in a major corporate case." I sank into a kitchen chair, processing this information. "Are you sure?" "It's confirmed. The Oregon Bar Association is investigating. Apparently, someone sent an anonymous package to the managing partners with recordings and documentation showing that Barbara and 2 others had instructed their investigators to manipulate evidence in the Westbrook Industries lawsuit." "Vega," I said immediately, the connection crystallizing in my mind. "That would be my guess," Emily agreed. "Sounds like his style from what you've told me." "Has Sarah seen this yet?" "I don't think so. It just broke maybe 20 minutes ago. I need to tell her. Thanks for the heads up, Em." I ended the call, my mind racing. Barbara had refused to pay Vega's blackmail demand 6 months ago, had assured us she would handle the situation. Apparently, Vega had been playing a longer game, gathering more damaging information before making his move. I debated how to break the news to Sarah. Despite the complicated history, Barbara was still her mother, and this would be devastating. Not just the professional disgrace, but the public nature of the downfall. Sarah came in from the studio, hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint smudged on her cheek. She took one look at my expression and paused. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk," I said gently. "It's about your mother." She sat across from me, concern, replacing her earlier contentment as I explained what Emily had told me. Her expression shifted from shock to disbelief to grim understanding. "Vega," she said when I finished echoing my earlier conclusion. "He couldn't get the money from her directly, so he went after her professionally. It seems that way." "How bad is it, the coverage?" I pulled up one of the articles on my phone and handed it to her. She read in silence, her face paling as she absorbed the details. The story was explicit. 3 senior partners at Reynolds, Bradford and Keller had allegedly engaged in systematic evidence manipulation across multiple cases, with the Westbrook Industries lawsuit being the most egregious example. Barbara was named prominently, with references to her 30-year legal career and her reputation for winning at all costs. "She'll be disbarred," Sarah said quietly, setting down the phone. "Everything she's worked for, gone." "I'm so sorry, Sarah." She stood abruptly. "I need to call her." "Of course." Sarah disappeared into our bedroom, closing the door for privacy. I turned my attention to dinner preparation, giving her space while keeping myself occupied. 20 minutes later, she emerged, her expression troubled. "She's not answering," Sarah said, sliding her phone onto the counter. "I left a message, but—" I set down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. "Do you think we should go over there? Make sure she's okay?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I'm worried about her state of mind. This is everything she's feared. Public humiliation, professional ruin." We drove to Lake Oswego in tense silence, both contemplating what we might find at Barbara's condo. The security guard in the lobby recognized Sarah and waved us through without calling up, a small mercy that saved precious minutes. Sarah knocked firmly on her mother's door. "Mom, it's Sarah and Mike. We know you're home. Please open up." No response came from within the immaculate condo. "Maybe she went somewhere else," I suggested. "A friend's place." Sarah shook her head. "She doesn't have close friends, not really. Colleagues, acquaintances, but no one she'd turn to in crisis." She knocked again, louder. "Mom, we're not leaving until we know you're okay." After another moment of silence, we heard movement inside, and then the door opened to reveal Barbara Reynolds, looking utterly unlike herself. Her silver hair, normally styled impeccably, hung limp around her face. She wore a simple robe instead of her usual tailored attire, and her eyes were red-rimmed behind her reading glasses. "I told the partners I'd issue a statement tomorrow," she said flatly. "You can tell the vultures to wait until then." "We're not here about statements, Mom," Sarah said gently. "We saw the news. We were worried about you." Barbara blinked, seeming to truly register our presence for the first time. "Sarah." Her gaze shifted to me, momentary suspicion crossing her features before fading into resignation. "Michael." "May we come in?" Sarah asked. Barbara stepped back wordlessly, allowing us into her home. The usually pristine space showed signs of disruption. Papers scattered across the dining table, a half-empty glass of what appeared to be scotch on the coffee table, cushions askew on the sofa as if she'd been lying down. "I assume you've read the articles," Barbara said, making no move to tidy up or apologize for the disarray. "They're quite thorough in their character assassination." "We've seen them," Sarah confirmed. "What happened, Mom?" Barbara gave a hollow laugh. "What happened is that I made powerful enemies and underestimated their resourcefulness." She sank onto the sofa, gesturing vaguely for us to sit. "Dominic Vega was more thorough than I realized. He wasn't just recording our interactions about your marriage. He was gathering information on my cases, my methods." "The Westbrook lawsuit?" I asked. She nodded. "Among others. I've operated in grey areas for years. It's how I built my reputation, how I won unwinnable cases." Her eyes met Sarah's. "It's how I afforded your art school, your comfortable upbringing after your father left us with nothing." "Mom!" "I'm not making excuses," Barbara interrupted. "I'm explaining. There's a difference." She picked up the scotch glass, swirling the amber liquid. "I refused to pay Vega's blackmail. I threatened him with legal action if he released anything about my investigation of Michael. I thought that was the end of it. But he had more damaging information," I concluded. "Much more. He went to Bradford and Keller directly, anonymously at first. Sent enough evidence to spark an internal investigation, then followed up with the comprehensive package once they were already looking." Barbara took a long sip of scotch. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late to contain it. Sarah moved to sit beside her mother, not quite touching but close. "What happens now?" "Now?" Barbara set down her glass with careful precision. "Now I issue a statement expressing regret for lapses in judgment. I resign from the firm I helped build. I face disciplinary action from the Bar Association, likely disbarment. I sell this condo that I can no longer afford and find a way to reinvent myself at 62. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "A comprehensive dismantling of my life's work." "You're not alone, Mom," Sarah said softly, finally reaching for her mother's hand. "We're here." Barbara looked genuinely surprised by this statement. "Why would you be? After what I tried to do to your marriage, the manipulation, the investigators, all of it." "Because you're my mother," Sarah said simply, "and because I understand better now why you did what you did." "Do you?" Barbara's expression was skeptical. "You were trying to protect me from experiencing your pain. It was misguided and wrong, but the intention came from love, however warped." Sarah glanced at me, then back to her mother. "And because I've seen you trying to change these past months, I cleared my throat. Barbara, we can help you navigate this. I know people at several media outlets through my work. We can make sure your statement is positioned properly. Barbara studied me with new consideration. Why would you help me, Michael, of all people? It was a fair question. 6 months ago, I might have taken satisfaction in Barbara's downfall, might have seen it as karmic justice for her attempts to destroy my marriage. But now, seeing her stripped of her armor, I found no pleasure in her distress. Because Sarah loves you, I said honestly, and because I believe in second chances, in the possibility of change. The words hung in the air between us, an olive branch extended across years of mutual distrust. I don't deserve your help, Barbara finally said. Probably not, I agreed, but you're getting it anyway. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. You're a better man than I gave you credit for. I know. Sarah rolled her eyes at my response, but squeezed my hand appreciatively. The first thing we need to do is get you proper legal representation, Mom, someone not associated with your firm. Barbara nodded slowly. Margaret Chen, at Eastside Law. She's respected, discreet, and owes me a favor. Good. Call her tonight. Sarah looked around the condo. And you should stay with us for a few days until the media circus dies down. Barbara's eyebrows rose. Stay with you. We have a guest room, I confirmed, following Sarah's lead, though we hadn't discussed this beforehand. It's not as luxurious as this place, but it's private and comfortable. Barbara seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Thank you, I'll consider it. We spent the next 2 hours helping Barbara organize her papers, draft preliminary notes for her statement, and pack an overnight bag. As we prepared to leave, she paused in her bedroom doorway. There's something I need to tell you both, she said, her voice steadier than it had been all evening. About Vega. Sarah and I exchanged glances. What about him? I asked. He contacted me again last week, wanted more money to keep additional information private. Barbara's expression hardened. I refused, of course, but I want you to be aware that he might not be done. He might come after you next. What could he possibly have on us? Sarah asked. Nothing legitimate, Barbara assured her. But as we've seen, Vega doesn't need facts. He creates narratives that serve his purposes. We're not afraid of him, I said firmly. Let him try. Barbara looked at me with something approaching respect. Nevertheless, be vigilant. Men like Vega don't appreciate being thwarted. The warning stayed with me as we drove back to our house, Barbara following in her own car. The idea that Vega might still be lurking, nursing grudges and plotting revenge, was unsettling. But unlike 6 months ago, we were facing this potential threat together, eyes open and united. Once home, Sarah showed her mother to the guest room, while I prepared a light meal. None of us had much appetite, but routine provided comfort in uncertain times. As we sat around our kitchen table, the three of us formed an unlikely alliance, bound by crisis and cautious reconciliation. I've been seeing Dr. Winters twice weekly, Barbara said unexpectedly as we finished eating. She's been helping me understand my patterns, my need for control. Sarah looked surprised at this voluntary disclosure. That's good, Mom. She says I transferred all my fears about betrayal and abandonment onto your relationship with Michael. Barbara glanced at me. That I was trying to create a self-fulfilling prophecy to prove I was right about men. And now? I asked. And now I recognize that my experiences aren't universal, that my pain doesn't have to become Sarah's pain. She straightened in her chair, some of her natural dignity returning. I still have considerable work to do, obviously. We all do, Sarah said. But this is a start. Later that night, after Barbara had retired to the guest room, Sarah and I stood in our kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Are you sure about this? I asked. Having her stay with us? Sarah nodded. She needs support right now. And honestly, I think this might be a turning point for her, for all of us. It's not going to be easy. The media coverage, the professional fallout, the financial implications. I know, but she's my mother, Mike. Despite everything. I pulled her into my arms, kissing the top of her head. You're remarkable, you know that. After everything she put us through, you're still willing to help her. I learned forgiveness from you, Sarah said, looking up at me. When you could have been vindictive or smug about her downfall, you offered help instead. Well, I am pretty amazing, I joked, earning a playful swat on my arm. Seriously, though, thank you for supporting this, for supporting me. Always, I promised. Whatever comes next, we face it together. What came next was a complex process of reconstruction, for Barbara professionally, for our relationship with her, for her understanding of herself. The media coverage was intense, but eventually faded as new scandals emerged. The Bar Association investigation resulted in a 1-year suspension rather than permanent disbarment, a relative mercy attributed to Barbara's full cooperation and Margaret Chen's skilled representation. Barbara did sell her condo, moving into a smaller apartment, closer to our neighborhood. She began consulting for non-profit legal aid organizations, using her expertise to help those who couldn't afford traditional legal representation. A redemptive turn that surprised everyone, perhaps herself most of all. As for Vega, his threatened retaliation never materialized. Whether he had moved on to more profitable targets or been deterred by our united front, we never knew for certain. One evening, about a year after Barbara's professional disgrace, the three of us sat in our backyard, watching the sunset. Sarah's career was flourishing. Her second gallery showing had sold out completely, and she was working on illustrations for a children's book. My community garden initiative had expanded to 12 sites across Portland, with plans for implementation in neighboring cities. I never thought we'd be here, Barbara admitted, sipping her iced tea. The three of us, like this. Life rarely follows the expected path, I observed. Indeed. She hesitated, then added, I'm grateful for that in this case. Sarah smiled, reaching for my hand. So are we. The private investigator Barbara hired had discovered not an affair, but a husband dedicated to rekindling his wife's passion for art. In trying to destroy our marriage, she had inadvertently strengthened it. And in facing her own downfall, she had found a path to genuine connection with her daughter, and even, improbably, with me. Not the ending any of us had anticipated, but perhaps the one we all needed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.